If you have over $200,000 sitting stagnant in your bank, retirement account, or home equity, then you're literally losing money. On this show, you learn how to get that money working for you consistently and conservatively. Learn to grow your nest egg with your host, Shawn Winslow. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another Multifamily Monday episode. I'm your host, Shawn Winslow, and this is the Multifamily Money Podcast. What is going on, everybody? You know the drill. Every Monday, we're coming at you all things multifamily real estate investing. And today, we've got a killer guest. But before I get into that, as always, a little housekeeping. The way I get in front of more ears and eyes with this show is by you, my valued listener, sharing this with people that can also get value from listening, whether that be directly sending them the link to listen or leaving a rating review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's how we get in front of more ears. And how we get in front of more eyes is if you prefer YouTube, check us out on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe. And that's how we get in front of more eyes on the good old YouTube. And guys, the reason for this show is I really want to help others achieve their dreams. And through my experience, best way to achieve dreams, and obviously we've talked about this before, is that there's two key ingredients to most dreams, and that is time, having available time, and having money, the resources to achieve those goals. And through my experience, the best way to achieve those two things is through investing in real estate. And that can be active, that can be passive. That's why this show is for both. And so my mission is to help as many people achieve their financial goals, their life goals, their dreams. And to do that, I need to get in front of more listeners. So if you could take the time and share this with those that you think would get value, I would greatly appreciate that. All right, now about our guests. So today I have an awesome guest. It was supposed to be two individuals that are partners, and that is, Christian Osgood and Cody Davis. And unfortunately, Cody got held up in some traffic. The life of an entrepreneur. I know how it is. You're always going around somewhere, right? You're moving around. And unfortunately he got held up in traffic, but Christian, they're both studs. So it doesn't really matter. And Christian told me we'll get Cody back on the show, but Christian's a stud. And this story, he talks about how, like me, and like a lot of the listeners, he was, working a 9-to-5 corporate job. He wanted to invest in real estate. He started investing in real estate. He knew that would be his future, slowly but steady, adding to his portfolio. And he got up to two duplexes, I believe. So 4 units. And that's when he met his now business partner, Cody Davis. And Cody kind of opened his eyes to a way of scaling much faster. And he was able then to scale. And I believe he said 18 months. It might be 2 years, but somewhere between 18 months and 2 years, he was able to scale from those 4 units to over 130 units. And he did this all using creative financing, specifically seller financing. And for those of you that aren't familiar with those terms, we do break it down in the show. So take a listen. But this was a killer episode. We talk about what is creative financing, what is seller financing, how to go about it, how to find the right owner, the right seller that would love to carry that contract to utilize seller financing with you, and what the structure of that deal kind of looks like, both from the debt and the equity side. And then we talk also about, operating and third-party property management versus, self-managing, because they've done both. And so we get into these great topics, and it was just a really great conversation with Christian. I had a wonderful time. I picked up some great nuggets. I know you guys will as well. So without further ado, let's get into this awesome episode. All right, here is Christian Osgood.
Yeah, well, for me, I started the more traditional route. I bought into the whole, hey, you need to go to college to get a job to invest in real estate. I actually knew I wanted to be a real estate investor at a really young age. I saw one of our neighbors 3 houses down. He bought a whole bunch of houses, flipped them. He held, I think, at one point, like 20 units, very, very, very low debt, bunch of laundromats. And so I was like, okay, business, real estate, that's financial freedom. I always had that in the back of my mind. I'm like, so how do I acquire all these things? Well, that guy did it in a 20-year career as a banker. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to college, get a job, ended up in sales. So I started with apparel and I moved my way to advertising and then to data at the CoStar Group. So I was selling for LoopNetApartments.com, CoStar. And while I made really good money, I wasn't buying real estate. So my origin story and really my core message to people is if you want to be an investor, there's one way to do it. You have to invest. And while that sounds really stupid, I wish someone told me that like 8 years ago, is about 8 years before I started. I did the whole like 4 years of college. I got a 6-year sales career. So, I mean, I had a decade that I lost trying to figure out how to buy real estate with money, only to buy 2 duplexes at my house. The 2 duplex cash flow enough to pay for my house. So my real estate buys my real estate, and I was out of money again. So I blew a whole decade to get free real estate, and that's it. Like, my goals weren't met. I still had to work. There's still bills to pay. I have to eat. And I'm like, that was really hard to get from A to B. What happened from there? I connected with Cody Davis. At the time, he was a 21-year-old with 30 units, and we partnered on a 38-plex. I was stuck trying to scale. He had figured out the creative finance thing, and we came together where I run a lot of the business ops. Cody is really, really, really good at buying real estate. And we went out and bought a bunch of real estate together and then created multiple companies around that. But that's where I am today. We have a property management company, an education company, 130-ish multifamily units. I have to go back and count them again. And the resort that I'm in today, Robin Hood Village Resort.
Congrats, man. That's amazing. So from 2 duplexes to 130-ish units and this resort you're sitting in, that's wild. And before I get into it, the listeners, how they did it was mostly through seller financing, at least from the story I've heard, and we'll get into that. But before, I just want to touch base on a couple of things you said, because your story, like, there's so many similarities between me, Christian, between you and I, and it's just wild. Like, I was conditioned, even though I grew up with a family of entrepreneurs, I was still conditioned to go to college, do well, and get a job. And that's what I did. I studied finance, got a job in financial services. And that's what I did. And like you, I thought I'm just going to stack money and then slowly build my portfolio over time. And then one day, I think like you, it just hit me where, wait, why am I doing that? I don't need billions of dollars to do this. Not even really millions out of the gate, right? And I don't need decades of experience. Like, I can do this. And that's kind of what changed for me. But this episode's not about me. This is about you. So let's get into it, my friend. So yeah. Seller financing, that's how you guys scaled. What is it and what is it not? Because I feel like there's a lot of misconception to that question.
Yeah. Well, let me scale back one step to what is creative finance in general, and then I'll get into how seller finance is the specific avenue that we use. So creative finance is anything outside of the box. So your standard way to purchase a business, piece of real estate, anything is going to be either you have enough cash to buy it in cash, or you go to the bank and you get a loan from a bank. That is standard conventional financing. I'm going to qualify with a bank. You're going to need, in most cases, good to excellent credit. You're going to need to have money. You're going to have to put money down, and the property is going to have to go through appraisal, which means you have to get your price to buy that asset. So that's conventional finance and the rules that you have to play by. Now, seller financing, you replace the bank with the seller. So say it's $1 million property and they've paid off the property, or they owe very little on it where your down payment can pay off their existing note. Either way, at the time of close, they don't have debt on that property. They can act as the bank and lend you the money where you give them payments instead of paying your mortgage to a bank. You pay it to the seller. A good example, it's $1 million property and it's 10% down. I can negotiate whatever down payment I want with the seller and whatever interest rate I want and whatever price I want. All the money's made up. So you'll get in, it's $1 million. If I can put together $100,000, doesn't have to be my money, but if I have it, I'll use it. If I need to bring in a partner, I'll do that too. But you need to find the capital. You go with the 10% down, and then the rest of the $900,000 would be financed at whatever rate you negotiate directly to the seller. And that's seller financing. And what we learned is if you make up all the money, you don't actually need money. It's not rocket science. So we had a deal in Seattle we actually purchased. Yeah, I know. I wish someone told me that. Took me a long time to figure out. We had a deal, a first one we ever did in Seattle, probably the only one I'll do in Seattle. But stellar deal, 3% interest. This is when rates were at about 6.5. 4.5% down. And it was $1.1 million purchase, 7 units. So I got a great price. 7 units in the Seattle area typically is going to be a little bit more than $1.1 million. So we got a good price. We got an excellent interest rate, and we got a really low down payment. He wanted more down, so we added a special clause that says at the end of every year, we'll pay you an extra $20,000, just principal pay down. So it's like you get a little bit more money, but I had just bought the 38 plex and another 6 plex. We didn't have more money to put down, and I didn't want new partners. So $50,000 purchased $1.1 million in real estate. That is just absolutely insane. You can't do that with the bank. They won't allow it.
Nope.
So that's what we do in creative finance. You take a fantastic leverage point, and the rules of the game are you need to get it into long-term, cash flowing, fixed rate debt. All of those are equally important. Has to be fixed rate, has to be long-term, 1000% has to be cash flowing. And if you follow those simple rules, you can literally buy anything. And whenever you close, you now make more money.
And you can keep it forever.
Yes. And that was the biggest thing. We are buy and hold. Everyone I know who's sold real estate has had a reason why they regret selling it. If you can figure out how to buy it and how to never lose it, those are our 2 underwriting questions we always ask. You can buy anything. And you do that, again, I'll say this all over the podcast. I want people to hear this. Long-term cash flowing fixed rate debt.
Hey, there's so many benefits to it. Yeah, like you said, you're able to cash flow and then you can keep it forever. But it's also the best, in my opinion, hedge against inflation too, right? Because you're paying that fixed payment forever. Yeah, it's just really powerful. And to your point, yeah, if you ask any experienced real estate investor what their biggest, regret or mistake is, time and time again, it's going to be that they wish they didn't sell, right? And that they just kept everything. But so let's dive into this, because you mentioned earlier on that it's a specific type of owner you're looking for, right? They either got to have very little or no debt on the property, right? And open to this type of structure. So how are you guys, one, finding this type of owner, and two, are you guys pitching this to them? And like, how are you negotiating this type of structure to them?
Great question. The answer is probably not what you're going to expect. So what a lot of people will do is they try to target, well, where's my lowest hanging fruit? If we can only seller finance with low debt or no debt, I need to target people who just have low to no debt in their portfolio. We don't do that. I do a really simple method, and this has worked phenomenally for us. Set your goal first. Take a step back and go, okay, what do I actually want to do? And what is this going to cost me on a monthly basis? So for example, for me, I wanted to retire my wife, and I want to buy a house in Texas because I've lived in Washington for 31 years and I want to experience what the sun is. And so for me, I'm like, okay, what does that really cost to have financial freedom? My wife now works in our companies and has a blast, but to actually own that time to get to do the projects we want to do and to have a house in Texas and retain our tiny little house in the Seattle area, so it's around friends and family, to do all those things that I want to do for my ideal existence, $20,000 a month gets me there. I can maintain 2 houses. I can have sun when I want. And Washington is probably the most beautiful state in the country for about 1.5 months of the year. And so I can live up here for that. $20,000 a month. Then you have to go, how much real estate do I need to get there? Mm-hmm. And I promise I'm getting to the point here.
No, I love it.
When you know what that number is, $20,000 a month, how much real estate do I need? Well, for me, assuming a 6% return, which is less than half of what we get on most of our deals, but assuming a 6% return, I need $4 million in real estate, yielding 6% to hit my goal. Really, really simple. How do we do that? Well, I need to find the people who have already done that. And so when we're looking for who are we trying to meet, I look in the market I want to invest in and I go, who has the multifamily real estate that I would want to buy? And instead of asking them, can I buy your real estate? I meet them and I go, how did you get to where you're at? Because their journey and the pathing there is far more valuable than the actual real estate they own. When we get together with them, I communicate in 30 seconds to a minute. This is who I am and what I'm trying to build. And the rest of the conversation is just about mapping out who they are. How did you get here? What was your why behind scaling? What are you trying to do next? And what do you recommend I do as a next step if I'm trying to emulate what you've already done? We've had that conversation with most of the owners in Grant County, Washington. And everyone now knows who I am and what I'm trying to do in 30 seconds or less. But they're bought into, I'm trying to retire my wife. We want to live in Texas. I admire what you've done. Talk to me about how you did it. And they've talked to me about how they did it. We've learned all these strategies, and now they're invested in helping us. So we get the phone call from them when they want to sell or they have a buddy who wants to sell. They know I don't have a lot of money. A lot of them use seller financing. And a lot of the people who own a lot of real estate are a little bit older and have taken the time to pay down their debt. So the seller finance deals, while it was a lot of work on the front end, people just call me now. They're like, hey, I have an idea. I have a property. How do you convince them to seller finance? Just go, are you willing to carry a contract on it? If they say yes, awesome. If not, you have to figure out another way. But that's the whole prospecting method. Set your goal, find the people in your market who have hit your goal, and away you go.
I love that, man. It's all about building relationships, right? And from what I've learned is people love sharing what they've learned. They love obviously talking about themselves and the stuff they've accomplished and imparting that wisdom on the next generation. Now, I feel like I talk about this on this podcast all the time, like, and whether you want to call it a mentor or not, to me, that is a mentor, right? You know, even if you don't even meet them a few times, it's still they're imparting wisdom, and it's something that everyone should be striving for, right? So I love that you brought that up. Now, I want to get a little technical. So how for the newer listener, the newer investor, they're probably like, okay, Christian, but how are you actually finding those individuals? Is there a strategy to, other than are you just asking around, networking? How are you actually finding who those more senior investors are? More experienced?
Yeah, it's our second most popular video on YouTube, Cody and I've ever done. It's how to find any property owner ever. You can check it out, Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategy on YouTube. Super simple. So we're using a targeted approach. I'm not cold calling a million people. I am hopping onto Google Maps because that is a website that has every single property that exists. It's just a satellite image of every property. I know my market, so I'm just looking in Moses Lake is where I started. And we branched out to the surrounding cities. But in Moses Lake, Washington, which roofs are longer than the roofs than a normal house? Like, you look at neighborhoods, I'm like, that's a really long roof. And then you zoom in and you see like 3 addresses on it. I'm like, that is a multifamily building.
Yeah.
You can then take that address and plug it into your local county tax assessor, and it will tell you who owns it. Occasionally it's an LLC, which is fine. I'll get into that in a second. But generally, of someone's name. And you take that person's name and type in the word phone number after it in Google and the city that the property's in.
Yeah.
You will find their phone number. And if it's redacted and it only shows you the last 4, you're going to do one more Google search. You're going to type in those last 4 digits that it gave you, the person's name, the city, and the word phone number. And all of a sudden, the internet will just pull every iteration it could find of their number that have those 4 digits. We've done this for A-list celebrities. I've talked to, this is how we got started on Bigger Pockets. We've contacted lenders this way. When we started our course, we talked to Brad Lee directly. We just pulled his number online, and it takes like 5 minutes. If they're in an LLC, to figure out the individuals who own it, we go to opencorporates.com, which is also free. You type in the LLC and the area it's in, and it'll tell you who filed it. It's that simple. And yes, sometimes people are better at hiding than others. There are 1 or 2 people ever who we were not able to find the actual personal cell phone for. It's very simple. It's totally free. It only doesn't work if you're using the shotgun approach and trying to hit everyone at once. You're not doing this on a huge mail list. You're selecting an individual property and you're calling someone saying, hey, you own this asset. For me, I owned a property right down the street, and I went from my property to my neighbors. And the conversation was, hey, I'm your property neighbor. But that's how we're finding them. Google Maps and free online searches. There's no software. There's no skip tracing. Just Googling a phone number, giving the real person a call, and booking a coffee meeting to talk to them.
Love that, man. And thanks for sharing that, because anyone can do that. And that's so easy. And again, back to your point too, of building relationships. I don't think it would work with a shotgun approach. I think that's why it does work. And for instance, I have this one property I've been trying to build or buy for over 2 years. This guy keeps saying he wants to sell, and I just stay in contact with him. I've met him at the property 3 times now. I've had phone and email correspondence. I just want to be the top of this guy's mind when he eventually does decide to sell, right? And I don't think you can do that with a shotgun approach. I don't think, I think they would just see through it that, you're not really there to, build something more than just a transaction.
Yeah. And that's really the whole thing. It's a relationship. It's being present. A question I get all the time from our mentorship group is people will just ask, how do I actually run these conversations? How often do I follow up? And I'm like, it's not this weird sales strategy. It's an actual relationship with an actual human. Like, you have a question about real estate in their market, you call them and you ask them about, hey, I'm up against this. You're stuck underwriting a deal. You call that more experienced person who's bought a lot and say, hey, I think I have a great deal here. Would you mind underwriting this with me? Like, you call them when you have something to talk about, just like you would any of your friends or family. If you don't have anything to talk about, you generally don't call them.
Yeah.
But you form a real relationship with a real person. There's no gimmicks. There's no sales tactics. It's meet a human for coffee and be a person. And if you can do those things, we've ended up buying a lot of real estate. Cody and I have been partnered less than 2 years. We have over 100 units together. A resort. We're probably going to buy another 100 to 200 units this year just on autopilot because we built so many relationships and I'm just around these people. That's my tribe is the people who are buying real estate in Central Washington. We hang out, we talk, we strategize together. And when people trade now, they just know Cody and I can close. If it's not something they want to move through a bank, they don't need to cash out. People just know, hey, I'm going to call Christian and Cody and they will close on it because these guys will buy anything in Grant County.
No, that's amazing, man. And that's what it's about too. And to me, it seems just more of a fulfilling strategy too, because you're just generally building relationships with people and also, acquiring units like you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, your work day is like, I'm going to meet with people and get coffee.
Right.
That's not a hard job.
No.
If you're doing the miserable, like, hey, I'm going to cold call 1 million people today and I'm going to knock 150 doors.
Right.
That's an awful job. I don't want that job. I'll work a 9 to 5 before I do that because that's just a terrible 9 to 5. But if you're like, yeah, I have to meet with, say, you meet with 2 owners a week. For those who are new to real estate, you find 2 people. Maybe you make 5 calls. 2 people will get coffee with you. There's over 50 weeks in a year. You will meet 100 owners in your market if you commit to, I'm going to talk to 2 people and get coffee twice. That is so attainable. That's just not hard to do. And anyone can do that.
Yep. And those 2 people there could be several hundred units between them, right? And
absolutely. And I have a lot of people where, yeah, you make 1 call, you have one introduction, you talk to them about their sixplex, and they're like, yeah, by the way, I own 250 other units. I own all the self-storage in town, and my kids don't want this. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. I have enough money and I want to pass cash flow to my kids, not cash, because they're going to blow it all. I don't want my kids to blow it. Right. Like, well, that's, right there. They're proposing seller financing to me. They're like, I want this long-term because I don't want my family to blow the money and I'm not going to live forever. So let's pass it to the group that I believe wants the real estate the most because you guys aren't going to lose it.
Right.
Again, not rocket science, just like really simple. Seller financing is a great fit for a lot of people. They usually propose it to Cody and I, not the other way around.
Well, that's even better.
Yes, sir.
There's no pitch there. It's like, all right, let's do it. But if there was a pitch, what does that look like? And I would also like to talk about terms too. Like, are you IO? And for listeners, that's interest only. Are you doing interest only? Are you actually amortizing the loan? Like, how does that look?
Okay. There's 2 very good questions. Let's attack the first one prior to interest only. So we're saying, like, how do we make the presentation? Like, how do you ask for seller financing? Okay. What most people will tell you is, oh, they're going to get all these great tax benefits. And that's probably true. I promise you, if they're sophisticated enough to write a loan to you in seller finance, they already know the tax benefits. You do not need to sell them on it. You will sound like a noob. Any of the selling points for seller financing, if they're able to do it, they already get the basics. You're not going to have to do a lot of selling. The way we ask is you get through the whole deal because you're trying to build credibility. You want them to believe that you are the buyer and they want to sell it to you. That's when you get to the deal part and there's a property on the table, I'm a ready, able, and willing buyer for this property. So you establish that instead of establishing I need seller financing. Figure out the deal. What price do you want? Tell me more about the condition of the property. What is your goal in this? You map out all the pieces, and then you just ask, are we able to carry a contract on this? Are you comfortable with seller financing? It is a one-sentence question, and how confidently you can ask that will determine how often you get seller financing. It's a normal question. Where people get messed up is they hesitate, they get uncomfortable, or they start selling it. And if I hear that, I immediately think this is someone who doesn't know what they're doing. They're not comfortable pitching it. They don't know how to manage the contract. I'm now uncomfortable as the seller. If you just ask me, are we willing to carry a contract? We get yes more than anyone I've ever met for seller financing. And it's not like we're trying. I'm not targeting it. We bought the property next door. So I'm in our resort. It's 20 cabins over here. 18 cabins. There's a triplex on the other side of the river that we own, the little river that runs through the campus, literally the adjacent parcel. It was on the market, not listed with seller financing. We called about the deal and we said, would you carry a contract? They're like, well, we have some debt on it. Never mind. We'll pay off the debt and we'll seller finance it to you. They wrote a check to finance the property to us.
That's wild.
No pushback whatsoever. They're like, well, no, we can't do that. Yes, we can. I mean, that's the pitch. And so the biggest thing for it is ask confidently and build credibility in yourself, not the vehicle that you're going to purchase the property. Because when you know their targets, you just need to write an offer that hits it. If you know they want this price, they really want to get cashed out over X amount of time, can I write an offer where, again, cash flow, long-term fixed rate debt? Can I get the pieces I need to run the property profitably? And if I can do that, I can say yes. And if they ask why seller financing, I go, well, here's what the bank would offer me. And here's what makes the deal work for me. If all of these terms hit your objectives, let's bypass the bank and let's do a deal that works. Because this is what everyone else is going to run up against, is they're going to have the same option with the bank, but you and I can hammer this out right here. Like, that's the extent of selling that I'll do. And if there's more pushback there, they're not a good fit for seller financing, and that's fine too. You don't have to buy every single deal that comes in front of you.
That's for sure. And that leads to my next question. I'm sure you don't get it too much because it seems like you're dealing with more experienced investors. But what if the next question is from the seller? Like, what does that mean to carry a contract?
So the question is, what does it mean to carry a contract? As simple as I explained at the beginning of the call. We can write a loan to the bank, with the bank, to finance the property. You would get cashed out, and it's going to have to pass appraisal, and I'm going to need to put 25% down, which is going to be more difficult on my numbers. And it's not that it's not doable, but that's what it looks like for me. It's going to be more expensive upfront for me, and we have to meet appraisal, which means your price is not flexible. The bank has to approve your price, not me.
Yeah.
If we write a contract, we can hit your price. All I care about is that I don't give the property back to you. I want to own the property, and I want to hold this forever. So we just need to come up with terms where you're happy with your price and the monthly payments. And I need to know that I can profitably run the property. And it works for me here. And I will tell them that at this price, I can give you your price. So, I mean, say they're $200,000 over asking price on $1 million asset, but they're willing to give me debt at 2%. I have a friend who just did this.
Oh, heck yeah.
He's like, okay, well, a bank would ask for 6.5%. Property doesn't work there. Also, it's not going to appraise for the price that you want, so the bank's going to say no. You can't get cashed out at your price. If you want your price, I can do that in 5 years. I have a game plan on the property. I'm going to raise the rents a little bit. So just tell them the story. Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do with the property. This is how you're going to get paid back. But I'll give you your price that the bank won't let me give you. You're going to give me an interest rate, so you're going to get paid along the way. And then in, say, 5 years, I'm going to try to refinance this property in 2, but I need 5 in case anything goes wrong. And that's going to be a journey on how I move it from medium-term debt to long-term cash flowing fixed rate debt, is I have a 5-year window to do a 2-year project. Yeah. People can get behind that, like, oh, wow, that sounds really safe. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to lose it. And you're going to sell it, and you're going to get your price. As long as the time piece works for them, which it doesn't always. But if they can wait 5 years to get the full cash out, and they can take 10% down right now and some payments, you're good to go. You get a yes on that almost every time.
Love it. And you got to keep it simple, right? Because if they're not familiar with it, a confused mind says no. So I really like that approach. And so you guys generally aiming for, if you can get it, a 5-year term? Is that kind of the sweet spot if you can get it?
I will generally aim for 30-year fully amortized debt on a seller finance contract. And we have got that before. We have a lot of 15. We have a lot of 10.
Okay.
I have a few that are 3 years. And it's because it's a project that is very, very simple and they're small buildings. So I'll pick up a triplex that is completely mismanaged. In 3 years, I can fix 3 units.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. We're going to move it to a different debt product. It's also when you have a larger portfolio, if I mess it up, I can write a check for the whole property. That makes me pretty comfortable when I'm like, wow, if we really screw this up, I just buy it out. It's fine. You shouldn't start with short-term balloons. The goal is to get to long-term fixed rate debt. When you get a little bit farther, you can take on small projects that you can afford to take on. But for anyone who is new to real estate, who's just jumping on the podcast, you're trying to learn how to get started, you need to pick up balloons that are 5 years or more. And you need to have a bunch of cash flow lined up before you take anything shorter than that ever. If you take on short-term debt, you better be able to write a check for it if everything goes wrong, because sometimes that happens. The whole method is, how do I buy it? How do I never lose it? Short-term debt is a great way to lose it. Just ask Dave.
That's great advice. And I wish this was preached more out there, because, syndications got really hot over the last, 3 years. And unfortunately, a lot of those syndications, they use bridge debt, right? So bridge debt is usually a 1 to 2 year term with maybe a +1 and another +1. And then you got to refi. And a lot of those are coming due this year.
And with a floating rate, some of those rates have gone from 4 to 9.5%.
Yeah. And if you didn't put a cap on that rate, if you didn't buy one, you're screwed, right? It's just going through the ceiling, and there's going to be a lot of pain. So it's going to be interesting to see.
If you are able to buy properties conventionally, because those all are stacked with debt, those typically aren't great candidates for seller financing. However, what I foresee happening at the end of this year, beginning of next year, I think that's where a lot of these are going to get in trouble. I think we're going to see massive destruction on the large multifamily scale, because so many people got into syndicating because they assume the market's going to go up forever because it's done that for a 11-year, 12-year super cycle. Those days are over. A lot of people who have a lot of floating debt on variable rate, you're going to see a lot of syndicators get hurt. There are some good ones out there. Just had Terrence Doyle on our channel. He's going to be co-hosting with us next month. He's in Denver.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
He did a great job of fixing. He's going to be around. Guys like him are going to be buying all the properties from all the other syndicators, because they're few and far between where you have a truly gifted syndicator. He's a good operator. He is going to eat everyone's lunch. I'm calling it right now. He's going to double in size in the next 2 years, if not triple.
Man, this just leads me to the next question I wanted to get into, because I know you've talked about how you're kind of the operations guy of the team, and you guys self-manage. And, I've been contemplating doing that as well. Me and my partner have, going back and forth. We third party property manage right now. And you probably know where I'm going with this, but it's just, you're never going to get a perfect property manager, not even a good one, really, right? It's just there's some that are worse than others. So, and where I'm going with this is, like Terrence and like other successful operators, I feel like the ones that are really successful have one piece vertically integrated in their company, and sometimes both, and that's either property management or construction management, or both, right? So I'd love to get into that, because I feel like that's what's going to set people apart in this type of market. So yeah, not vertically integrating your property management. How has that been for you guys? Have you always done it? I'm sure you guys have some great systems and processes in place to make this effective.
Yeah. So when you first start, I recommend up to your first 20 units, just self-manage them. You're going to hire better property managers if you have an idea what your manager's doing. That's just a hard and fast rule I have. Like, do not start with property management, self-manage it. Even if it's out of state, there's not enough units to have a lot of terrible headaches unless you took on a project that's too big for you when you're starting. So when you first start, buy a property or a few properties up to 20 units where you can just do it yourself or with your significant other small group of people can manage, no problem. Now, for property management for us, we picked up a lot of units very quickly. Our market, like most markets, is known for having bad property managers. We actually, when we started trying to use bank debt, we couldn't use it to acquire a lot of properties because the books were so bad from their PM that it wasn't actually bankable. They had to go in and reconstruct books to even have a chance at passing, getting a bank loan. That's terrible.
Yeah.
So what we committed to is like, okay, well, if we want to dominate this market, we just brand on, we have the best books, which is a fact. We have fantastic bookkeeping. And so I'm like, cool. We already have competitive advantage just by having properties that are sellable because we keep great books. Easy. So for us, it was a way to control the rents of the properties around us, which brings everyone up. But what you miss with most property managers is they don't own real estate. They're a service provider, which means they get paid to run your property. And often they get paid when there's turnover to place people, which means they're not actually incentivized to run your property well. They want to see churn. Vacancy is expensive. You don't want churn. There are some ways around that, but those are a lot of the industry problems. So what we did is, and we also had a property manager steal think of an appropriate word for it, a boatload of money from us and all their clients. They stole security deposits and rents.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep. Bought a plane, bought a house, and left the state. Yes. Subsequently crashed their plane. However,
karma. That's called karma.
Yes, sir. But so we've had things go wrong. And so what we did is like, look, people are paying us money. I want the money to pass to our hands. I want the responsibility. PM is a brutal, hard, thankless job. Tenants want the world, and that's totally fine. They deserve a great place to live, but there's a lot of demands. There's not a lot of gratefulness. And if you manage for other people, there's a huge problem with PM. If you do a great job for most people, you're going to improve their property and they're going to sell it, which means you probably lose the business. And if you do a terrible job, they're going to fire you and you probably lose the business.
Yeah.
So whether you're good or you're bad, you are constantly acquiring things and you're always fixing problems. People don't need a property manager when there's no problems. So if you're trying to get into it and you're doing third party, and you've probably experienced this, it's a hard industry with fairly low margins, and no one wants to pay you anything and no one appreciates you.
100%.
It's how it works. What you get from it, though, as an owner, is you build relationships with others, and we manage enough in our county where if you look through the CoStar data, we started buying their average rent was $600 when the surrounding cities were closer to $1,000. Average rent for a one bedroom now is $1,000. Like, rent's gone from $600 to $1,000. And while that might sound like we're just terrible landlords taking over the town, we have dumped millions of dollars into renovating, repairing buildings. The quality of life in that city has gone up massively because the buildings can now afford it. And that was a huge thing that we did. That's what property management can do when you do it right.
Yep. And I'm sure your taxes have gone up too. So you're paying property tax back into the community as well. So that's one thing I feel like a lot of people
wouldn't believe.
Yeah. That's a lot of people don't take that into account, you know? No, that's great, man. And so I take it from what you just said, you're also managing for other people.
Yes. When we started, we took on a few third clients just generally, and I don't recommend doing that really quick. We made it a Cody And Christian's portfolio, which is not insignificant. It takes a lot of team members to run that. And then we have it's the friends and family. We don't have any family in real estate, so it's really just our real estate friends. I'm like, well, if you're buying in our city, we'll manage your building. And we have some friends who are aggressively investing alongside us. So it's nice to be able to have an influence over those rents. There's some efficiencies in the market of, hey, if I control the property on either side of mine and they're look the same, we just get a higher level of control, which is excellent.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point of the margins too, it's if me and my partner do this, it'll be just to manage our own properties, but it won't be to make money on property management because that's, like you said, margins are thin, and that's not where you're gonna, build your true wealth. It's more to manage the margins of the properties we own because we feel we can do that better, and also it's just the factor of that we actually care because they're our properties. So, I don't. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it's quite frankly, like our biggest reason that we took on a little bit more third party outside of influence is my team was so good. I needed a little bit more money to pay them more. Like they deserved a raise, and my properties didn't quite sustain their raise. So I picked up like 40 more units under management with Cody. The two of us went out, got some more business, and it was enough to pay my staff what they deserved. That was the big reason that we made the push to like, you know what, let's bring on a few more people so that we can expand our team. But Cody and I have never paid ourselves 1 cent from property management. In fact, we've contributed a little bit to it to get it started. It exists to run our portfolio, to help our friends, and to keep my staff paid. I don't see a universe where I ever pay myself, because when we pick up more properties, I need more people. And when there's more money, I'd rather pay my people more and keep all the great talent that I have.
That's smart, man. That's very smart. And so you guys also operate your own like construction management, renovations, all that, because that's in our experience, that's where we get killed the most. To your point of churn, turnover, you know, it hurts even more the longer that thing is just sitting there vacant. So, and if you're not operating these, you know, renovations, the subs and the contractors, the property management, they don't care. They're going to take their time. Like you might be the third property in line to get that renovation. So are you guys controlling that as well?
Yeah. So we have gotten absolutely screwed by multiple contractors when we started, and that will happen to everyone. By the way, like your first property manager you hire is not going to work out 9 out of 10 times, if not 9 out of 9 times. The first few people you use for construction, I've never seen anyone find a random contractor, vet them, and be successfully not hosed on their first few times. We've had roofs quoted at $90K that ended up coming out to $140K, which is just like we raised the money for the renovation. So when you go that far over budget and you don't have the money, that's awful. What we do now is we have found through trial and error the right team, and he'll only work with people who are like big owners. He wants to work exclusively with people, but as you scale up, better people want to work with you. We built a brand and a reputation of, hey, no matter what happens, we pay on time. Like instantly, you send us an invoice, boom, paid. You want more work? We'll buy another property. Like we will keep you fully busy. We have a team now led by one guy in particular who handles everything for us, and he is phenomenal. He costs a little bit more than some people, but he never, ever, ever goes overbid, and he costs less than he's worth. That's what you're looking for. It will take time in any market. It's actually why I recommend choosing a market and sticking with a market. We have a couple people from our mentorship program, Caleb and Chuck. They're on YouTube. Their channel's called Caleb and Chuck. Give them a follow. But they bought 28 units in Texas in 3 different cities with 3 different PMs. And they've liked their PMs except for 1. So 2 out of 3 is really good. But when they start getting into their renovation projects, they're going to have to find a different team for each market. That is a absolute pain. I think they're in for a very expensive ride learning how to do that. Super proud of them. For 19 years old, bought 28 units.
Wow.
And they were door knocking. They had like $700. Amazing what they put together with seller financing. However, I'm calling it right now. Their biggest pain point will be when they have to renovate. Finding a contractor and staying within budget. I think they're in for a really rough time. So we build the relationships just like we do with an owner. We sit down for coffee. We let them know what we're trying to do in the city, what our overall mission is, and will they work with us exclusively? And so while I don't own that company, we have the exclusive contract. They only work for us, and they work well beyond full time.
Love it, man. And that's so true. And to your point of, you know, paying these subs and these contractors immediately, man, I can't back that up enough. I have other businesses, and in any business, doesn't matter what it is, you know, when you pay fast, they will bend over backwards for you just because they know you'll pay fast, right? In another business I have vendors that it was during the height of the pandemic, and they were offering, you know, supplies that was, you know, needed for the pandemic. And most people would call up and be like, can I buy this? I'd be like, no. But if anytime we called up and wanted to buy, it's like, of course, we'll allocate it to you, because they know that we pay immediately. And same thing goes with our subs. I've seen it where we used a construction management company, and they were just slow to pay, and we'd lose sub after sub because these guys, that's what they live on. They need to get paid timely. And then conversely, when we paid them immediately, these guys would, anytime I picked up the phone, they'd come back. And I recently picked up a new plumber too. And that's part of the reason he keeps coming back, is because pay him immediately. He sent me an invoice. I paid it that day. It's hard enough to find a good plumber that'll, one, call you back, but two, do good quality work. So,
and that's the biggest thing. Like they just want to do the job. For the most part, service providers want to do the job and get paid. And it's that simple. And if you can be easy to work with, understand they're not going to do everything perfect. If you have a little bit of grace for them, manage your people. Don't let them just go all over the place. I've had that happen too. But
yeah.
Like sometimes they're going to do stuff wrong. And if you're just like, hey, it happens, man, let's just get it fixed. If you're easy to work with and you pay on time, you're going to retain amazing talent. And it's not like everything we do. We keep it really simple. It's not rocket science. Just be the client that you would want to have. And they usually bend over backwards to keep you. And that's worth gold.
Hell yeah. On the property management side, what's one thing you would have done differently looking back now?
I would have taken longer before we started taking on third-party clients. And if you're managing for anyone else, I do not manage for brand new owners. One, I think you should manage yourself anyway so that you learn how to play the game. But two, 90+% of our questions, concerns, complaints come from people who don't understand how property management is done. And they get overwhelmed, they get angry. And I've fired 2 people as clients, and both of them were first-time investors, bought 13 or more units. And I was like, we can't service your property because you take 95% of our time for like 5% of our revenue. It makes no business sense to go through this pain. So I wish someone told me that. The one other thing that would be really helpful is if you're managing properties as a property management company, if you hire a contractor, pay the extra money to get what is called a must not exceed. I have a contract every time they quote us, and I let them build in like a 15% contingency of, we'll pay more for you to write a bid that says, I will not exceed this bid. That way I can use with fixed. It's just like fixing your debt. I don't want a variable rate project. They go, we will complete the project and it will not cost more than X. It holds them to great quotes. Like they have to really spend the time putting together that quote, and it's going to save you money. That would have saved us multiple 6 figures, probably $200,000-$300,000 last year.
Wow.
Had we just written quotes where they had to stick to them, and we didn't do that early. That's a magic clause that I think everyone should have in their contracts if you're managing properties.
Yeah, and you don't see them try to cut corners on that type of contract. They're like, well, I can't go above this number, so we'll just do this.
I have not had that happen yet. Reason being is I have my boots on the ground there, check all the properties we have progress checks throughout the whole thing. And we have enough business. And this comes with scale. You're not going to start there.
Right.
But we have enough ongoing business where they know that we fired other people in the past. Like if you don't do a good job on this project, you're not going to get more business. And when we have a huge pipeline of business, they want to work with us. When you're starting, I think it's worth the risk. You got to manage them. You got to make sure the quality of work's there. But I would rather have fixed cost and have to watch my contractor than have them all of a sudden just start quoting me $50,000 over budget. That is more painful to me than, shoot, they cut a corner and now someone has to go in there and fix it. They choose your battle, but for me, I can't work off of variable costs. It's just not a business model I'm comfortable with on the whole. How do you own it? How do you never lose it? Variables suck.
I'm with you, man. I've seen it get out of hand real fast. I'm with you. All right, man. Before I get into the last 4 questions, first of all, this has been an awesome episode, but where can the listeners find you?
You can message me directly on Instagram. That's where I respond the most. That's just at Christian Osgood. You can follow Cody and my entire journey, the seller financing, the whole 9 yards. We share everything on our YouTube channel. It's Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategy on YouTube.
All right. I'll link that in the show notes. All right, Christian, you ready for the final
Yeah.
four?
Oh, one more too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really quick. If anyone wants to learn, we have an online course because I get flack around the course, but here's why I love it. YouTube, you share what the algorithm will let you share because no one will watch a video if you're like, legal help for real estate. Like, no one cares. So YouTube is, you tell a story and it has to be entertaining and the videos have to be 60 minutes. There's all sorts of rules. We wanted to map it out as succinctly as possible. TheMultifamilyStrategy.com. We lay out exactly how we went from 0 to 100 units in a year. Anyone can follow that. That's going to be the scripting, the conversations. How do you structure the debt? How do you even have like a basic conversation with an owner? We map that all out there. You can always check that out. Mentorship's available there. But that's the one other resource I do want to share. If anyone wants to streamline their adventure, both Cody and I do those calls live every week.
Oh, that's great. Check that out, everybody. All right. You ready now? Final four?
Yes, sir.
All right,
let's do it.
Let's hit it. All right. Number one, why multifamily real estate as an investment asset class, and what type of life has it created for you, or what type of life do you envision it creating for you in the future?
Okay. 2 reasons why multifamily. The first is the most obvious. What is your product? Your product is housing for humans. Humans need shelter. That is just a fact. So as long as you're in an area where population is growing, not declining, multifamily is fantastic because everyone needs somewhere to live. Building is typically fairly slow and hard in this country. We don't do a great job of meeting housing needs. So on just a general investment, supply and demand curves, you have a needed product that will always be needed in any market. COVID's not going to come in and shut down the house to make it harder to collect your rent. But it's not like office where it's just going to get slayed because people don't have to go to the office now. The other reason is there are all sorts of government programs that banks are mandated to lend to multifamily to keep housing affordable. They don't have that for office. They don't have that for retail. They don't have that for industrial. Housing is important. There are programs where there will always be cheaper and more available capital for multifamily. You have to be able to get capital unless you're working with your own cash for everything. There's going to be a point where you probably have to lever to get the acquisition part of your portfolio done. So based on lending products and actual need, multifamily is stable, consistent, awesome. What has it afforded me? My sole goal when I started was to retire my wife and to buy a second home in Texas, where it's actually a primary home in Texas, and make my current home in Washington State a second home. I've done half of that. The big one is retire my wife. She's a teacher in the Renton School District. If you are in the greater Seattle area, things are nuts in that school district, not good. So we had this, it used to be okay. And the politics got weird. And I don't care if you're right or left. Politics don't belong in school. And I think everyone can agree with that.
Agreed.
So it got really weird. And it went from, hey, I want to retire my wife one day to, we got to get her out right now, which is why as fast as we did. That was something that was afforded in the first 11 months of Cody and my partnership. We retired my wife, and she now gets to work with us full time. I see my wife 14 to 16 hours a day. While most people only see their spouse like after work, I'm going to get like 8 lifetimes of hanging out with my wife compared to everyone else.
That's amazing.
Love that. Real estate did that for me in 1 year. So that is amazing. It hasn't done Texas yet. I think I'm 12 months out from that. We will see. Stay tuned. Follow our YouTube channel. I'm sure I'm going to share the adventure there. But I believe within the first 3 years of real estate, I will have my wife retired. I own my businesses. I have the employees I want. And I get to live in a modest house in an area that actually has sunshine.
Yeah, I love those goals. And that's what keeps you going. At least, for me, that's what keeps me going is my goals. Right. And obviously, the way the market's been going, Christian, it might be better that you didn't get it like a few months ago, right? Just the way
it could be.
So, but we'll see, I guess, right? All right, number 3, or actually number 2. I'm getting ahead of myself. That was such a good answer that I thought we were ahead.
That's okay. I talk too much, so that happens.
No. It was good. Number 2. What is a common mistake that you see a lot of newer investors make when it comes to real estate investing?
People buy for appreciation, not cash flow, or they don't get started at all. It's better to not buy a cash negative property and not get started. So let's start there. Buy for cash flow or based on cash flow. I buy for appreciation because appreciation multiplies your money. However, the market goes up and down. It goes up over time, but you could have bought, like, housing prices are down right now from where they were. So if you bought last year, there's a possibility that some of your buildings are worth less than you bought them for right now. If you bought for appreciation and you're negatively cash flowing that and you can't refi it because rates doubled, game over, you lost. So buy for cash flow long term so that you can hold the property. And if you haven't got started yet, you just need to make the commitment to buy that first deal. Once you buy your first deal, on average, within 5 years, you're financially free. That is just a hard and fast rule in real estate. People who get started, your first deal is your hardest. Make sure it cash flows. And within 5 years, you're probably going to hit your goal.
Yep, that's so true. And we buy in cash flow, man, because like you said, the true wealth, yes, is created through appreciation. But if you don't have the cash flow to hold it, then you're never going to have that appreciation. So
it's not that you can't play after you get wiped out, but like having a bankruptcy or foreclosures on your record, you're going to have a harder time rebuilding and playing the game. It's better. Great example. Dave Ramsey. That guy's worth like $700+ million. Is the last number I heard him say. Yeah. He's done okay. Think how much farther he would be if he didn't take the short-term debt and lose everything the first time. He would just be farther. Don't restart. It's harder if you restart. Can you have an awesome comeback story? Sure, but why be another comeback story? There's enough on the internet warning you not to do that. Just listen to this podcast, listen to Shawn and I, and don't put yourself in that situation. Cash flow, let the market take care of you over time. Don't depend on it.
But Christian, everybody loves a good comeback story. No, but I agree. I 100% agree. Why start over if you don't have to? All right. Number 3, what's a good resource that you would recommend? It doesn't even have to be a newer investor. It could be anyone, but just a good, solid resource for, a real estate investor. And it could be your course.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're trying to get started and you're not starting with a lot of money, like I had a decent credit score, but if you have any issues with my credit's not all figured out, or I don't have a lot of starting capital, creative finance is the way to get into real estate. There's a few courses out there. What ours focuses on is meeting with masters of the game and learning what they've done. A lot of people focus on distressed properties, and that is their whole thing. My one problem with that, and only problem with it, is while you can do lots of creative deals, you're not learning from someone who's winning the game. You're buying properties from people who have lost for some reason or another. If you're going to work with either one, I love our strategy that we teach. These are going to connect you with the people who are winning, and those people are going to help you win in that market. That is what we teach. That is a fantastic resource. If you're just looking to dip your foot in, though, again, there's a lot of videos. It's going to take you a lot more time, but 1,000%, you can hop on our YouTube channel and you can just get all the facts for free. Like, we don't hold back anything. That's Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategy. The course, which will streamline it for you, is the multifamilystrategy.com.
All right. Number 4, the good old, if you had a time machine, Christian. And since this is a personal finance show as well, because we know it's not what you make, but what you keep. So if you go back in time and talk to younger Christian and give him a piece of personal financial advice, what would that be?
You can always make money. You don't have, time is just worth more than money. And if you can arbitrage time, you're going to move way faster. We learned from people who had like over 50 years, bought hundreds of units. And we took the lessons from them in less than 2 years, got over 100 units. Like, we built what they built in a large portion of what they built in 18 months that they did in 40, 50 years. We did that because we didn't add steps. We learned from the best. We took the best parts of their strategy and we applied them. So what I would teach myself from that lesson is, if you want to be an investor, you don't need a college degree for that. You don't need other jobs for that. You don't need really anything other than a game plan of how am I going to get from A to B. Cody Davis, my business partner, is 8 years younger than me, and he is within $100,000 of the same net worth. We both went from worth basically nothing to a few $1 million in a few years. You can do that without the job, without the degree, because if you're an entrepreneur, guess who's hiring you? you. And I never asked myself for my degree. Basic thoughts. But if I could go back in time and say, dude, you don't need to add steps. You can just do the things that you want to do because you're not going to live forever. So how do you want to invest your time? Ask yourself that over where the money's coming from. It's how much time do I have? How important are my goals to me? And I would have gone back and told myself, ask those questions younger, because then I would be where Cody is and I'd have 8 more years. I would love to have been worth millions of dollars 8 years ago. I'd be way farther at 31 if I had the wealth that Cody has at 23.
Man, you don't need to add steps. I love that. I wish my younger self knew that, man, because I definitely added steps that did not need to be there.
Everyone does. When people are like, how do you go so fast? It's like, well, we identify what steps it takes to get from one step to another, and then we do those steps. You can't skip steps. That's where you lose real estate. Yeah. But you don't have to add them, and everyone adds a whole bunch of stuff. Just, how do I buy it? How do I never lose it? I'm going to add one more question you have to ask yourself to our rules, though. Is it going to be fun? Mm-hmm. You have to enjoy what you're doing. If you hate doing real estate, there's a bunch of really cool, stable businesses you can sell or finance, like service-based businesses, stable. They follow a lot of the same principles, right? Buy them on cash flow, creative finance. Everyone needs them. I mean, you can make a killing in laundromats or pool cleaning. Whatever you are passionate about and have fun doing, how do I buy it? How do I never lose it? And am I going to enjoy the journey? And if you can do all those things, life's a party.
Love it. Life is a party, man. And on that note, we're going to end this party. So Christian, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you spending this time with us and sharing your knowledge, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's close out. Listeners, as I always say, easy doesn't pay well, and instant gratification is self-destructive. So not only get out there and work hard for your money, but have your money work hard for you. So as Christian said, we can make life a party and also make this world, a better place. All right, everybody, catch you on the next one.
All right, adios.
Hey, this is Shawn Winslow. After being in the financial service industry for years and having candid conversations with good people just like you, I realized that so many of us are wanting an investment strategy that provides solid returns and consistent income without the bumps in the road. There's little known secret that your financial advisor doesn't want you to know. There is an investment out there that is less volatile and the returns are stronger. Get more details by going to greenbriercg.com and clicking on the free e-report. And by the way, if this show has provided you any value, then feel free to leave an honest written review and of course share it with a friend who needs it. See you next week for another great show.